Hey Martin, welcome to episode 51. How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Dave.
We're getting excited, aren't we? Because we've just talked about all the sorts of things we're going to be talking about in upcoming episodes. Not so much this episode, but
so much coming up.
we have. So today we're going to talk a lot about tank versus tank scenarios. But before that, how you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah, no, very well, thank you. I enjoy it right in the middle of 7 weeks off work at the moment. So,
Nice.
Yeah, it's looking good.
That's excellent. So what's you got? What, 2 weeks to go before you go back, and then you're.
I guess I got 2 weeks to go back. But when I go back to work, I'm going to be finishing work at 11 o'clock every day. So I'm going to work from 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock.
It's
Monday
basically
to
like
Friday.
you're a housewife now, because they kind of finish at 11.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they get up late. I shouldn't say things like that. Right. I know lots of people work harder than we do. So, but not at giving people ASL content, and that's the important
No one
thing.
works as hard as us.
So we're going to talk tanks versus tanks. We've got two games to talk about today. One that we took on Toby, the superb Toby Pilling. We played him at Stug of War. And the other I'm going to talk about, which is Counterattack at Sidi Bouzid, which for all you Tunisians out there is the scenario in the ASL Annual, number 20. Classic desert scenario, that one. Tanks versus tanks. Our one was not so much desert, but was classic tank versus tank as well. What's your thoughts on tank versus tank combat, Martin?
I don't really enjoy tank versus tank combat. I think I was first attracted through the original game squad leader gamut, or whatever they called it, to kind of the infantry stuff, and actually adding the tanks. It makes it really, really interesting. But I don't like ASL so much as just a tank v tank simulation.
Right.
Yeah. I still enjoy a game. Don't get me wrong. I'll still enjoy playing, but it wouldn't be my preference.
And is that because it's like so binary, or so what? Because I know that the flavour of the things like heat of battle for squads and stuff is.
Yeah, I think perhaps it's the way that tanks don't degrade, do they? Like, you have like an infantry force, and they casualty reduce, and they can break and come back, and the leaders can get wounded, and there's all sorts of their weapons can malfunction. With tanks, they're working perfectly. I mean, you have got malfunction, of course, but it's working perfectly, or they're in flames.
Yeah.
So that's perhaps that makes it sort of a little bit dicey sometimes, doesn't it? I mean,
very dicey. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can be lucky, and hit 3 tanks in a row, whatever, and blow them all up. And on the other hand, you might not hit any at all.
Of course, when you're lucky against squads, generally it's not a KIA, it's generally a break.
Yeah,
and then you have a chance to recover from that, don't you? I always feel like with tank versus tank that there's a right way to do things, and then there's my way of doing things, which isn't obviously the right way.
Yeah,
and I feel like you're punished very. There's a skill level. The better players generally do better with they know what they're doing with the tanks, and then it's obviously like exactly as you say, down to the dice. At that point.
And very often, so even because I listened to Toby's thing about tanks earlier, and it occurred to me that I know lots of those things, but I don't always think to use them when I should be using them. Yep. So it's interesting. Yeah, definitely something that I need. If I studied for a little bit, thought about it, and tried to raise my tank game, it wouldn't do any harm to my play.
If you could be a 10 out of 10 player for anti-tank guns, infantry, or tanks, or half tracks. So let's even put a half track in there. Or I'll give you planes as well. If you could be an expert level player in any one of those. Yeah.
I guess it would be infantry then.
Yeah. I feel like an expert tank player gets more out of his tanks and can make a bigger impact with his tanks
than an expert in their infantry.
I don't know.
You could probably argue that a lot of players are getting close to 10 out of 10 for their infantry play. Perhaps. I mean, it's in some way. I don't know. Is it less subtle? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's generally. I think often there's less choices with infantry. I think tanks give you more options. There's obviously a bigger, wider range of movement. There's
Mm.
more weapons that they can deploy.
Mm.
There's a few more tactics. Whereas generally the advance of the infantry going across the board is fairly
Yeah.
predictable.
What about you? What would you choose from those?
I'd love to be better at tanks. I'd love to. I am awful at tanks. I'm awful.
Yeah.
I think that's my one of many, but real weakness of ASL is just not getting enough out of the tanks, and also losing them too easily. I think.
Sorry.
No.
There's times when I play somebody like Toby, for example. Actually, forget this. Sometimes when I am playing with vehicles and I've got like a relatively weak vehicle, I kind of almost dismiss it. I go, it's too firepower's not going to do much good. It's very vulnerable or whatever. And then you play Toby, and he's got a vehicle like that. He seems to just achieve so much.
It dominates the battlefield, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's things like, and we've talked about this before, but reading the chapter H rules, knowing that you can get a half squad out of this half track or whatever, knowing it comes with a Panzer Shrek that you didn't have before, all those kind of things are really, really important. And I like that because it's a nice differentiator, because it's a skill level thing, and it's also if you put the effort into tanks and your vehicles, you get more out of them than, for example, most people know the capabilities of their squads. I get extra capability out of my squads by cheating you. I think I deployed my non-elite North Korean forces last week, but things like that you can generally have a fairly level playing field with infantry, but tanks you can certainly get more out of. So okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to play Toby's pre-game thoughts to start with about Stug of War. Did you have any pre-game thoughts before we play Toby's, Martin, or do
you? No, not particularly.
No. Okay, all right. So
I just remember thinking it was that. There was issues about whether it was balance, wasn't there? And there's errata to say that there should be one less Stug, I think.
That's right. Yeah. So
balanced at that point.
Yeah. So as it's published, it's got 5 Stugs. 5 Stugs. Yeah, 5 Stugs against 6. Are they BT something? So the 6 Russian tanks.
Yeah.
And the balance is way in favour of the Germans. I think it was something like 14-1 or something on the scenario. The designer has said it was play tested and designed as 4 tanks. So whether it's an errata or whether someone changed something at the last minute. So we played it with 4 Stugs, which I was surprised about, Martin, because I think we needed every advantage against Toby. But this was a relatively simple scenario, wasn't it? So there wasn't a lot that we could do wrong. So let's play Toby's pre-game thoughts, and then we'll fire up the game and see how it went.
I don't have too many pre-game thoughts on Stug of War. All AFV affairs tend to be dicey, and in my experience, they tend to be a bit cagey and a cat and mouse, certainly to begin with. And then what can happen is when the balance tips one way, the other player has to go in sort of all guns blazing, or suddenly start taking loads of risks. So we'll see if that's what happens here. My only sort of vague plan is to, let the Germans come on to me. He has to be the aggressive one in this, and also to split my forces so that I can, if the opportunity presents itself, take advantage of those turretless Stugs and get some possible side armor shots. That's it, really. We'll see how it goes.
All right, Martin. So, as Toby said, there's not a lot really that could be done about this scenario in terms of big ideas of tactics. Obviously, we have our Stugs here, 75-star guns, pretty decent against the BT7s and the T36s, aren't they? So the scenario here is that the Germans have to score 4 points, and they'll get a point for each Russian tank they kill, and they'll get a point for exiting a Stug off the right-hand side of the map. And it's 3.5 turns, so it's not a lot of time.
No, it's significant though that the Stugs have got, I think it's a 9 depletion number for armor piercing.
That's right. Yes, by SSR there's an extra thing. Yeah, exactly. And although the counters show the heat, there's no heat yet. Not that we didn't try to fire some heat in this scenario, but we were quickly told there was no heat available until a few months later in the war.
Yeah.
So we're the Germans. Toby is the Russians. I mean, it's a case of push forward as far as we could. So we thought about whether we were going to try and go through the middle or around the bottom. We had a bit of a chat about this. So in the end, we decided to kind of split our guys up, don't we? And see how we go really with all this. So we basically, because there's no Russian tanks on, we're allowed to basically just teleport our tanks wherever we really need to go. I mean, I think that's the rule in ASO, isn't it? There's no snipers. There's nothing going on. I should mention again, Toby rolls his dice separately. So he plays on a physical board. Obviously, we're playing on Vassal, so you won't see Toby's rolls. But we'll try and do our best to remember what they were. And this is why we've obviously got our leaders exposed here, because Toby can't necessarily
see those.
Yeah. Exactly. So we kind of split our guys up a little bit, and think that we'll try and push down through the bottom of the board, and just try and keep the Russians honest by making sure they can't come around the side. I think the biggest weakness the Stugs have is obviously no turret and a weakness on the side against the Russian tanks. So we've got to prevent the kind of attacks. We go for some acquisition here just before the wall, just to discourage any hull down attempts that the Russians might make. Now this is a little bit risky, isn't it? Because if we lose a tank here, a tank's gun, we it's 25% of our force potentially goes. But we're brave. We do that. So Toby brings on his platoon moving tanks, and does so in this fashion. And we
decide we can go for a kill here.
Yeah, exactly. So this tank down here in K1, this looks probably the most vulnerable tank. And the idea is getting through the woods. I always find that a lot of people are too nervous about woods and going through tanks, and with the tanks, and obviously a bog check is sometimes likelier to bog than you expect, but it's generally I know that there'll always be the mires and stuff like this, but generally you can get through it, and then obviously subsequently the trail breaks help everybody else.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's there to be scared of, really? So through we come. We obviously bog straight away. So that stops everything there. Toby spins his turrets. He starts to get some acquisition against us. Obviously misses, and we fire back and miss. And this is kind of how it looks at the end of the first turn. In fact, that's actually the second turn for.
I mean, the bog doesn't really matter, does it? We can get out of the bog later. We're still going to get a good prep fire shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, Toby hits us with I think it was a 3 or
I think.
Yeah, it was.
No, he needed it was a 3, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he gets a 3.
He needed a 3, got it,
yeah, he gets the 3 to kill. And suddenly now our plan of coming through here, Toby's now on the attack. And it all seems like it's got quite difficult suddenly. And this is where, you don't want to be playing someone like Toby when you're now down. I could argue 2 tanks on the scenario card, because we're at 3 rather than the 5. But basically, we have to push forward. I mean, there's not a lot else we can do. So our next turn, we try again and see what happens. And so this time we come around the back of the Russians here. Toby spins his turret, spins a tank. I think this was this the critical hit, or he does.
I can't remember. It's happened again, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Now, this one leaves it a bit tricky now because now we're 2 tanks against 6. I'll be honest with you, Martin. I wasn't sure we could do it at this point.
No.
But where there's a will, there's a way. We decided that okay, we're in for a penny, in for a pound.
We decided that something that hasn't worked so far,
yep,
actually might work now.
Yes, exactly. And of course, it's made it more difficult because there's now our own Rex in the way. The next tank, like you say, what hasn't worked twice before might work this time. But we do know, he has been rolling low here.
Yes.
And it's again against the run of play that we should have lost 2 tanks there. So it's not impossible that we're kind of okay. We have a bounding fire shot, and we kill the first. Yeah. So we're now one quarter of the way through our victory conditions. We still need a fair amount of luck, I would say, to kind of push us forward. But we move the next tank through.
Go for a little kill here as well.
Yeah, now I believe here we might have a tank in the wrong position for the Russians, so they all go into motion. It may well be that there should be a tank in J7. So but anyway, we'll carry on as if there wasn't. The Russian tanks fire back down here on the bottom of the map, and the Russians about turn. And now this is a good tactic, isn't it? This is the go into motion. And on your first movement point, get out of line of sight. And this is kind of critical for a lot of good tank play when you are outmatched on your tanks. So we take another couple of shots at the tanks down in the bottom of the map, but obviously no 2 kills. And then we have an intensive fire shot here. Now, this was one of the things we had here. We had a bounding fire shot that kept rate of fire, but we ran out of movement points, couldn't fire again. And it's absolutely fine to fire again in the advancing fire phase because you're not marked as a bounding firer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the very few times you can fire in 2 different phases of a turn.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
So we get another kill here. So this is looking
suddenly
good.
Looking a little bit better, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So now we've got a fighting chance. So we need to kill either 2 more tanks or get these 2 guys off the board. So here's Toby kind of jumping out of the way of our guys here. And this is where it's going to get interesting. So Toby goes crew exposed here. We'll do very shortly. Now these are 1-man turrets, so if they can't fire, obviously if they're crew exposed. And this did confuse us, didn't it? We were kind of a little bit
unsure why Toby was doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And he knows what he's doing. It's not like he didn't know. So the challenge here for us is, okay, well, are we going to try and go for the kills or do we go for the exit?
Yeah.
And both tanks need an ESB move to get off the board.
That's right.
So that's a challenge, but obviously we can go for to kill instead. So we looked at the odds, didn't we? And we kind of, we tried to play this in terms of the correct odds. Given that we only have our player turn to go, a bounding fire shot, we won't get the adjacency, we won't get the point blank, the emotion. All of those aren't going to help. I think it's something like 4s maybe to hit. So it's going to be challenging. But obviously we need a higher roll than that to get off the board with ESB. So we decide that we can.
It's very straightforward, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. So we take it.
I think the southernmost tank has actually got more points to roll for, hasn't it?
That's right. Top guy needs one point of ESB.
So we're hopeful in this,
and we get him off. So it's just this last guy here. Now he needs 3 points for ESB, which is obviously the most he can go for as well. So we just run for it now. And you roll your 5, and we're off. We needed a 6
off.
or less.
We won the game.
Yeah. Now Toby says what he did was he kept the CE for vehicle smoke grenades. So the idea was if we were going to stop and try and have a shot, first thing he'd do is throw a vehicle smoke grenade out as a response. But that didn't work. But I mean, it was such a low chance of us hitting anyway. In hindsight, I was surprised. I think he may have been better off taking the shots. But it's a catch-22, isn't it? He can stop his tanks, and then we'll have a better chance of hitting them. And we might have gone up to like 7s, maybe 6 or 7s to hit him. Had he stopped.
It still can go into motion, can't it? Do a motion attempt if it turns out that we're going for the kills.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that may have been playing the odds better, kind of giving him in a way sense both options. Okay, the smoke grenades wouldn't have worked. But,
right, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it's a decent little scenario. It's one of the scenarios that you could play 4 times, one after the other, and kind of perfect. The kind of the right approach. And this goes back to, I think I've talked about this before, the idea of whether you can solve ASL scenarios. And I think these kind of scenarios lend themselves to being solved in as much as you can with dice, obviously. But there are particular, this is the right approach here, and this is what you need to do to maximize your chances. So it's kind of fun. It played in, I mean, an hour and a half, I think we got through it in.
Would that be a good scenario for somebody who's being introduced to tanks?
Okay, so it was great because there was very few machine guns, if any machine guns around. Platoon movement isn't naturally an easy thing for. If you were, I think if the German player is the newer player, then yes, definitely. And you could give them the 5 tanks, couldn't you? And you could just let them have it. I think what it really does show, and many of these kind of scenarios do, is highlights the difference between a fairly invulnerable tank on its front versus the more mobile and more numerous defending tanks, for example. So you've got a little bit of play.
Panzer v Shermans, isn't it?
That's right.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
But it's a nice simple scenario, and obviously you're not going to have snipers to worry about and things like that. So it is, it does encourage you to go see and enjoy the benefits that brings.
Enjoy the fresh air.
Yeah. Would you play the scenario 2 or 3 times, one after the other, or would you rather play like a more medium scenario once?
Oh, I'd much rather play a medium scenario once. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know whether or not, like, for example, you can become a lot more skilled when you play something like this 2 or 3 times.
Right. So perhaps, you were saying earlier you'd like to improve your tank game, and I'd like to improve my tank game. And probably what we should do is play something like this over and over and over until it drums into us that this is the best way to deal with a gun that's definitely going to kill you if it hits and stuff like that.
There's just always another scenario on the next page of the binder.
Exactly. It's just, life's just too exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
It's like a journey on a yacht, isn't it? There's always the horizon.
Don't talk to me about my yachts again. I know Joe was not keen on me getting a boat, but he'll talk differently when I'm playing him in ASL in some Mediterranean port or something. But I was talking to the kids about this. The idea of spending a 2-week holiday in the Mediterranean, which would be lovely, and you think, well, you've got to sail there, and that takes like 6 or 7 weeks to get there.
Yeah.
And you can spend your 2 weeks there, and you're going to spend 6 or 7 weeks coming back.
Yeah.
It becomes like a 4-month holiday.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks in Greece.
If you could become really wealthy, you could perhaps fly your boat out there.
Wow, that seems like a challenge. I mean, I think that's kind of spoiling the point of the boat, to be honest. But,
yeah, I guess so.
But one day. Okay, so here's Toby's post-game thoughts.
Oh, well, I didn't manage to win that in the end. It was a good little bit of fun, and hopefully demonstrated some rules to listeners of the podcast. I mean, I feel I had good luck early on. Certainly, Dave and Martin were more aggressive than I thought they would be. I'm not surprised they moved in, but I thought it might be more behind the wall early on. But charging into the woods was quite ballsy, as they say, and of course, one of them bogged, but not the other two. And one rule that we missed out on observing was, if my to kill number had been 1 higher on those 45L guns, then I believe I'd have been able to force immobilization task checks every time a shot pinged off one of the Stugs. which is basically a morale check, where if they fail, they bail out. But I didn't have a high enough to kill number. But anyway, I took 2 of them out. And then, and I was feeling quite confident. And then the luck swung away from me, really. They got 2 of my vehicles. And I suppose if I'd been micromanaging the statistics and the probabilities, I probably should have stopped my tanks and stopped him exiting and tried to sort of shoot him out or go into motion if he tries to stop and shoot me. But I decided the odds were in my favour, forcing him to make the ESB rolls. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll go for that. And he managed to make his rolls and won. But it was a good bit of fun. I think it's, balanced with the taking the Stugs down to 4 instead of 5. And it's short and it's worth playing. That's it, really. Oh, I suppose the other thing to say is you may have spotted it, but one mistake Martin made was he used all of his, when he was moved the Stug up to the wall, he used all of his movement points, virtually, I think 7, in the last hex. Whereas, of course, what he should have done is use them all in the previous hex, or if he forgets as he goes in, then either wiggle around or stop and start again, and then just end going adjacent to the wall on 13 and stopping on 14, and that would have reduced my chance of starting up those tanks of mine from a automatic success down to a 2. So that was, that's worth bearing in mind. These are important things when you're using AFVs to remember. Is you want to give as little chance as possible for your enemy to make motion attempts. That was one little useful tip. But yeah, good game.
All right, Martin. So interestingly, so Toby mentioning this point about the movement points here. So let's take a look at that as we stand right now. So do you want to talk us through what happened there? And
yes. So the tank in P7 is moving towards the wall, and quite rightly, Toby points out that I spent too many points in N7, giving him a guaranteed what do you call it? The
motion attempt.
Motion attempt. But had I waited in 07, I was in line of sight of L1, and I'm not sure if it would have been a side shot. It would have been a side shot.
Yeah.
So I think it would have opened me up to more vulnerability there. I think the key thing was wanting to get in front of the wall where he's out of line of sight for the side shot, the flanking shot.
So I think. And I think they're actually out of line of sight. I think down there. I think, but we weren't certain, obviously, about that wall and whether or not that.
But 07 isn't, and 08 isn't. So.
Right. Oh, yes, yeah.
If I'd spent the points in the previous hex row, I think we would have been more vulnerable to a shot.
Right. But in general, Toby's absolutely right, isn't he? You know, like there's fewer points in line of sight.
And do you know what? I try to do it, but I tend to be like not very good at it, and for some reason. But he's absolutely right. Yeah,
fair enough. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's listen to Toby's tips now about tanks and how good players should be using their tanks.
What I'm going to talk about is using AFVs well in ASL, which I'm pretty sure was a request from a previous listener. And the problem with AFV usage in ASL is that it's an area where so many rules combine and coalesce from so many different parts of the rule book. You need to know about defensive first fire, defensive fire principles, who can fire at what, vehicular bypass movement, smoke discharges, motion attempts, triple point blank fire restrictions, overruns, and on the list goes. And that's why it's a skill where the high level players really gain their advantage. And what you find is that beginner players, the more novice level, tend to use their AFVs more as mobile pillboxes. The more novice they are, the more the AFV is a pillbox. As your play becomes more advanced, it's the mobility that's stressed, and that's what I'm going to try to encourage everyone to think about, is to increase your mobility of your AFVs. And I've tried to condense my thoughts down really to three suggestions that if I could only give 3 suggestions, these would be it. Okay, so number one is, the first one is something I've covered before actually, which is at all costs try to avoid prep firing your AFVs, unless it's something like smoke or a crucial shot, or you may have an AFV, another tank in your sights that you can destroy. So that's allowed. You can, of course, there will be exceptions. You can shoot now and again, but try to avoid doing so, because then you've got the potential to move, and opportunities will arise during your game to move and use that AFV to possibly encircle someone, or maybe your opponent takes a shot of a previously concealed unit, and then you go, oh, that's where the Panzer Shrek is, and then he cowers, and suddenly you think, oh well, he's not shooting that Panzer Shrek. Maybe I can move forward and encircle him, or if I break him, he won't be able to rout. So opportunities will arise that you previously would not have been able to take advantage of. The other thing is, you will insert doubt into your opponent's mind, because he will be thinking that AFV can still move. Where is it going to go? And it will affect his play. It will affect the shots he takes. He might think, well, I can't shoot that guy in case he cowers. I need to save the shot with the guy with the Panzer Shrek. So even if you don't move the AFV, it's still having an effect. But it will encourage you to move them and to seize opportunities you would have previously not been able to take advantage of. The second principle, I suppose, is this is more of a specific one. It's when you're moving a tank and you're stopping it, try to stop a tank adjacent to a bypassable obstacle. Because imagine this situation, you stop in the open, right? There's all the hexes around you are open, or maybe they're grain or brush or something, but a panther suddenly moves up in front of you and stops, and what are you going to do? You go in motion. Where are you going to run to? Your first movement point in any direction, the panther can hit you. So that's not really good. So if, however, you are adjacent to one or more bypassable obstacles, if you can make that motion attempt, you get a free turn of your vehicle covered art right then. If you haven't taken advantage of it, you can normally do it in the defensive final fire phase in lieu of shooting some other weapon. And then what the hope would be is that you can see a vertex that you can move into, for 2 movement points or whatever it is, and be outside of their line of sight. So by stopping AFVs where you can next to bypassable obstacles, you will extend the life of your AFVs in general. It's a general tip. So my third...
Right, we are going to do our newlywed / Mr. and Mrs. Would you like me to ask you some ASL related?
You certainly can do. I've got some for you as well.
Okay, all right then. So here we go. These are our see how well we know our opponent. Feel free to play this game as well with your ASL opponent. By the way, do you think that the majority of people have one preferred opponent they play, or do you think they play like as many people as they can? What do you think the breakdown is of?
I think there's quite a high proportion of people who've got like a regular opponent. They are the Mr. and Mrs. of the tournament scene, aren't they? The people that play each other until the tournament comes around and stuff like that. They're also little clubs, aren't they? There are little clubs
Yes.
I think in Aberdeen there's a little group.
There is. Yeah, Liverpool, they do.
In Liverpool there's a little group and things like that. Yeah.
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 Just to be
I reckon
clear,
it's high.
I wear the trousers in this relationship, Martin. I'll just be very clear about that.
Well, I'd be very glad if you could keep them on.
I can't promise that, Martin. I can't. Okay, we've almost talked about this already, so I think I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
Would you rather play an all-tank scenario or an all-infantry scenario?
All infantry.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So I had
Dave,
that.
that's one of my questions for you.
Is it? Okay, well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say to you, yes, again, all infantry. I'll do that.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
infantry.
All right.
But I have enjoyed playing the last couple of all-tank scenarios. I have enjoyed it. We haven't done Toby's post-game thoughts yet. We're gonna do that after this. We'll give you Toby's post-game thoughts about this. All right. Okay. So here's more of a dilemma question. So you're playing a game, and this may or may not have happened to me in the past. Someone disagrees with the rule that you think you know. Okay. He says, or she says, show me the rule, or will you just give in to their rule? Are you going to insist that you know the rule, or are you going to sit there and look it up? How do you handle that situation?
How insistent are they that they know it?
Yeah, they're saying this is the rule.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
and so I can look the rule up.
You can look the rule up if you can find the rule. Yeah, absolutely. You can look it up,
Okay.
but it won't be a quick look. It's going to be a rule that is tricky to find.
Okay. So I think generally speaking, if I disagree on the rule and it's in my favour, then I'm going to want to look it up. I'm going to spend a bit of time in the rule book, and hopefully they'd help. I think that would be the spirit of the game.
Yeah.
Both of you would be looking up, and one, at some point you go, "Oh, do you know what? You're right," or whatever. If I couldn't find it, I'd just go with what they were insisting was correct for the sake of moving the game on.
So how long? What's the kind of time period of looking?
I think it's as long as you're making progress. Once you're like sort of basically doing this, well, I'm sure I'm right. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's time to give in, isn't it?
Yeah. I thought that you would go with their interpretation and then look up maybe afterwards.
No, do you know what? I sometimes think I'm going to do that, but I never look rules up after a game.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I've played.
Even made notes.
They
and
do.
They're not bothered. Yeah.
But I've seen people write them down and then they look it up, and I think that's the way of becoming a better player.
It is.
Take that, and that's why we're not very much better than we were when we started, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. All right. Okay. So what about a new player invites you to come and play? Okay. And you go to their house, and they've said to you, "Look, I'm new player," as in new to you, and you sit down and you start playing, and they introduce house rule after house rule. Okay, so suddenly, for example, he says, we don't play skulking in this. We don't skulk in this," which is actually a topical thread on the forums at the moment. But we don't do skulking here. So I'd rather you didn't do skulking. And then you go to, bypass, freeze, sleaze,
Yeah.
And he said, no, we've house ruled that out as well. Are you going to carry on playing, his house, his rules? Are you going to kind of talk about the fact that actually this isn't the ASL that you enjoy playing? Are you going to play the whole game through? And it's going to, and obviously at the end, he asks you again, next week, same again? How are you going to handle this?
All right. Okay. I think I would probably play the game through. And when he says same time next week, I'd probably say, do you know what? I've got the kids. There's going to be flood.
Right.
It's probably going to be a terrible weather or whatever.
So
let's make some
the week
excuse
after?
up.
The week after then?
Well, I go, well, I'll tell you what, I'll email you.
Okay. All right.
And we'll and I would quietly drop them.
Right. Yeah. How many house rules would it take for you to quietly drop someone?
I think maybe almost one.
Really?
I mean, well, if you're talking about something like skulking, I mean, I'd want to say, at least vehicle bypass freeze, it's clear when you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even really clear when you're
I
skulking
guess
is a part.
advancing back to where you came.
You can go advance into the adjacent location, can't you? Just to the side of it. Well, do you know, it's that one's much less. There's much fuzzier, and the rules as they are. Why would you stand if you can't achieve anything from in the position you're in, why would you stay there and have the whole of the attacking force blast you to smithereens?
I guess because you can have a prep fire shot. So I suppose.
Yeah, but if you're unlikely to achieve much with that prep
Right,
fire shot,
right.
which very often is the case, isn't it? When you're defending, you've got overwhelming force coming towards you. You've got your little half squad, the 2-4-6 or something in the woods, with a massive prep fire, defensive fire shot lined up to fire it. Why would they stay there? They're not going to stay there. I don't think it's even a realism argument. Why would they stay there?
Yeah, I mean, there is this whole, why would you leave a building to go back into it again 2 minutes later? I mean, there's that side of it.
It's the way the game is I think anything like that, if somebody had a more modest, I can't think what kind of a house rule that I probably would go along with it. To me, if somebody wanted to use, is it battlefield integrity or something like that? And why not? Why not use that? But I think a major rule that changes the nature of the game. I've come around to play ASL, not your version of ASL.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what about if, good example, battlefield integrity. If they meticulously did that every time and it slowed the game down.
Yeah.
But they're like, well, this is the rule. This is.
I think you've got to look at. Well, it's not, is it? It's an optional rule, isn't it? And it's optional with the agreement of both players, isn't it? And I'd certainly humour somebody that wanted to play with it, but if it slowed the game down on second or third time, they're going, "Oh, battlefield integrity. Here's your bit of paper."
Yeah.
I got the rule's very clear, isn't it? It's optional with the agreement of both players.
Yeah.
I
did think that you would play through with their house rules.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure what you would do about playing them again.
Yeah. I'd find a way out.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
It's never happened to me. It's never happened.
It's never happened to me. No.
Just don't be frightened about playing other people. This is all right. Okay, this kind of has happened to me. Okay, not quite to this extent, but you're in a tournament game. You're in the final. It's come down to close combat. You need a 5 or less to win this close combat, to win the game. You've got an ambush, and you've done this. Your opponent has asked you to play with dice cup rather than a dice tower. So you're using a dice cup, and you are turning the dice upside, the cup upside down, and revealing the results. This has happened to me. You turn the cup upside down. You reveal. You've got your 4. You've won the close combat. One of the dice is sitting on a counter. Okay. And your opponent says, and it's flat. The counter is flat. The dice is flat. And the opponent says that's a cocked dice. What do you do?
Do you know, I wouldn't argue. I mean, it's insane. It's insane, isn't it? It's just somebody not wanting to lose.
Yeah,
I go, well, congratulations then. Shake his hand.
So you're not gonna re-roll? Are you gonna re-roll?
Oh no, I'd re-roll it. Of course, I'd re-roll it. Yeah, I'd re-roll it. But I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
You've
got an expression. You use it with me when you're a bit annoyed as well, which is whatever you want. And that basically is, I don't agree with this, but if that's what you want to do, go ahead. And I've seen you use that, and I think that's where I'd be with that, because it's clearly unreasonable, I think.
Yeah, I've never been upset with you.
No, I'm joking. But it is a thing. I think it is fair enough that you be very, very strict. That if it's cocked, it's cocked, even if it's blatantly obvious that it's a 6 and it's like a tiny 0.5 millimeter on the edge. I think it's I would just re-roll them.
I've told this story before.
You do the same.
Yeah. I've told this story before. Jim Neary rolled snake eyes against me in a tournament game, and his dice was literally up against the side of a dice tower.
Yeah,
and it was one of those ones where if you nudged the table, it was clearly going to just drop. And even if you'd have waited, it probably would have dropped. And he instantly just picked them up again and re-rolled them, and it was you see in the insights into a soul of a man at that point.
I think so. But you know what? Yeah, Jim's a really nice guy, isn't he? But the enjoyment you get from playing somebody like that who isn't messing around at all with the dice, just going to play the game.
I thought to myself, if all he had to do was cross his legs and just nudge the table, because I had gone through in my mind. Oh, what did he say? A better man than me. I thought that you would re-roll. I thought that's what you would do.
Which is what I do.
Yeah. it's hard to argue against it, isn't it? Because you don't want to be you almost become more in the wrong by arguing.
Yeah.
You look
You're
like
the petty one suddenly, aren't you? The way they're being petty, and then, but as soon as you argue, you're being petty.
Yeah. All right, okay. So last one for me. Would you only ever play ASL, no other board game, or give yourself the ability to play other board games but not play ASL anymore?
Yeah, no, I'd just play ASL.
Yeah, okay, and I had that. Not a difficult choice, or
I did think about it. When you asked it, obviously it wasn't very long, but excuse me. But I so mostly play ASL, and it ticks virtually every box for me. I think one way or another. I sometimes miss the strategy of grand strategy games. Yeah.
Well, and we talked about this before about the idea of completing ASL, and you can't complete it, but you could argue that we have seen almost everything that ASL has to offer. You can experience more of it, and there's no reason. I've eaten a chocolate bar, and I like chocolate bars, and I wouldn't never want to eat another chocolate bar because I've tasted
exactly
what they taste like. But you could argue that we open ourselves up to more experiences by playing other games.
Absolutely.
But we still go back to ASL.
But you know what? In a way, ASL is like sort of an old friend, isn't it? You've got to know it. It's been a big investment of time to know the game. But I do now. I play it. I'm quite relaxed playing the game in a way. Whereas earlier on it would have been quite difficult to. You had to think. You had to do research before the game, and you're reading up rules all the time and stuff like that.
And it's stressful as well, isn't it? When you start playing, because you're under pressure to know the rules and to don't get anything wrong. Whereas, like, exactly as you say, it's a relaxed kind of game of checkers these days for us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is.
When we're playing good players or players we haven't played before, it does get a little bit stressful, doesn't it? It does get a little bit
tense. It is, yeah. Tense.
Yeah.
I like the tension in ASL, actually. I think.
Do you have many ASL dreams after a game?
No.
Okay.
I used to have them, but I don't have them anymore.
Yeah, that's me too. Yeah, it's very similar. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Good job.
Okay. Right. So I've got 5 questions for you, but you already know one of them.
Okay.
Which was the all armor, all infantry, and I know what your answer would be. I guessed that as well. I thought it would be all infantry. Okay. So this one. Okay. So you are the Russians.
Okay.
Excuse me. You're the Russians, and you've got OBA. So you've got 5 black chits and you've got 2 red chits. So the Russians, I think, are unique in that all of the red cards have got to get pulled out for them to lose the module completely. Do you see what I mean? Because
because there's
second red card. Yeah. Your opponent very graciously shuffles the cards for you, and as they're putting them down, you just happen to notice that the bottom one is red. Okay.
Okay.
So you know that you could have 5 attacks with the OBA definite if all you do is take the top card each time. Okay. Do you say to your opponent, "Do you know what? I saw the bottom card," or do you just play the game?
If they've shuffled, okay. If they've shuffled, what I'm likely to do is draw from the top.
Yeah.
But then have them shuffle again each
time.
one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I probably should mention. I'm not so sure I would. If I'm being completely honest, I probably would just draw from the top, hope for a red to teach me some karma, to teach me some. Because, I guess there's a big difference of the odds. I would definitely reshuffle or get them reshuffled each time. Yeah. I'm kind of a bit like, well, okay, if the opponent has shuffled them, it's
their mistake.
But it's not their mistake. I mean, it's
no.
But yeah.
It's a bit like when you move counters under concealment, but you can just see the bottom of it. Yeah. Isn't it? It's a little bit like that, but that's perhaps less impactful.
Concealment.
Well, that can be impactful.
Yeah, concealment is actually one of the frustrating things about physical ASL because you can see the way that people move counters differently when they're concealed versus when they're a dummy, and we've both been in that situation where we've knocked over a stack. Either I've knocked over your stack, you've knocked over whatever. And we do that quick, and I'm thinking, I've just seen all these dummies. How long have I got to keep this pretense up for? We've got that kind of thing going on, but I think that's what I'll do.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah. What would you do?
I think your answer is pretty good.
Yeah.
Slight benefit of on the first card and then reshuffle them because often people reshuffle them every time anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
yes.
It's tricky, though, isn't it? It's tricky.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Right. My second one is you go to a tournament and you're going to play this guy. You meet straight away. He's a little bit pongy. And you sit down. Is this kind of a little bit vinegary? It's kind of like I mean, you've got all daughters, but like sort of
I don't have all daughters back here.
a teenage boy's bedroom kind of unfreshness about him. Anyway, you think, do you know what? Just hold my nose and get on with the game.
Yeah.
About turn 2, it's unbearable. Really struggling. Really, really struggling.
Yeah.
Game's even, but you're just hating it now.
Yeah.
Do you play on right to the end, or do you find an excuse to concede?
I do play on. Play on, as we know. I have played on in those situations. But, I am making sure very quickly at the end of the game that I tell my close friends that wasn't a pleasant experience. And the trouble is, here's the trouble, right? I don't doubt that all of us have not been at our freshest during either a tournament or a day or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And what do they say about a fox can't smell its own den or something? I don't know. There's some some saying.
Are you that stinky guy? That's what you're thinking.
And the thing is, and other, in a parallel universe, there's another podcast talking about a time where someone played you and me, and we had stinky breath, or we had something bad about us.
Yeah.
I don't know whether would you tell someone? Would you tell someone that they weren't at their freshest? I mean,
maybe if I knew them well, like I know you well, and I know you don't normally stink.
Thanks.
It's
the nicest thing you said.
So if breakfast in the hotel, something like that, I notice you do, maybe out of just kindness, a friendship, I'm like, you know what, they might not be a bad idea to run up and have a shower before play. But,
no, I'll be fine, Martin. I'll be fine. I'm all right.
Well, that's down to you, isn't it? I don't think I'd mention it to a stranger because, I mean, the person we're both thinking of, that's their lifestyle choice, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
And we should point out we've never played them since. I think I've only played this person once. Never seen them again.
Never seen them since. No.
Yeah, it's not anybody that we particularly know. It's tricky, isn't it? There's the whole thing about never refuse a breath mint and all that kind of stuff. It's harder when someone's offering you a towel and a shower.
Deodorant. Yeah.
All right. So last 2 questions there, Martin.
Last 2 questions. Right. So you are playing one of the greats. Okay. Clever, Fortenberry, Pilling.
Yeah.
And you slip into the lead.
Oh.
Things going well.
Okay.
Suddenly looks like you might be winning.
Yeah.
Okay. And inexplicably,
yes,
they seem to be making a couple of careless errors. Okay. Do you assume that their thinking is on a different level and carry on being very respectful?
Yes.
Or slide into training mode and start giving them patronising tips?
No, of course I'm going to take the first option there. I mean,
it's not worth it just for that few moments of being able to go, oh, yeah, do you know what? You shouldn't prep fire too much or whatever.
As we know, I played Trevor Edwards, who's a very, very good player. Doesn't play anymore.
Yes.
A great loss to the hobby. He was a good guy. Doesn't play anymore. But I beat him. He could have. It was a building control scenario. I had I think it was a 666 sitting in front of I can't remember. It was a Japanese.
It was Japanese, yeah.
And the idea was I could just go into the building, get close combat, beat him. But of course he can voluntary break. I'm assuming Japanese can voluntary break. Voluntary break. Go upstairs, and that would be the win because I couldn't advance to get up the stairs. And I come to do the whole route phase, and we do the route phase, and he doesn't do anything. And I know he knows this rule. It's not like Trevor's a much better player than me. And so I go into close combat, and I win the close combat. And I don't know how soon to say it before I shake the hand, I get the chit signed, and then I'm like, well, why didn't you just break and go upstairs? That's what I was expecting, because it was almost embarrassing, not embarrassing to play on, but I always felt bad about not calling the game before the route phase because I just assumed he would do it, and I felt bad on playing on because it was such an easy win for him.
Mm.
And I got the right reaction. You know, he's like, "Oh, I can't believe I forgot that. It's crazy. That's thank God." Rather than, "Oh yeah, you know, do you think actually we could have just called that as because it was, he'd clearly beat me all the way through. He was, he's a much better player than me." And that's the only way I'm going to get a win like these guys. You know, to actually. But yeah, I'm not going to just before the. I think the kind thing to do there would be, and I don't know if I would do it at least. Would you like to voluntarily break anybody before we move on to the routing things? You know, would you do that? I don't think I would do that.
Do you know? I think I would do with a lot of players, but I don't know that I'd do it with someone of the caliber of Trevor. I think you're way better than me. Yes. You're on your own, mate. You know. Yeah. I don't know. I'd see. I enjoy playing Trevor.
Yes.
I never had the honour of beating Trevor, but right. Do you know what? It's odd that he doesn't play now, because I once heard him say to somebody that his greatest regret in life, now, just think about that for a moment. His greatest regret in life was not discovering ASL earlier.
Right.
So like 20, 30 years wasted not playing it.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, maybe one day he'll come back and
maybe, yeah. So.
Yeah. But
right, last question then.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a tournament on, and you can't do it because you've got a really important business meeting, okay? And your partner, Nick, is getting a bit grumpy with you, actually. Like, "Oh, you got a business meeting? That's really bloody annoying. I was hoping we'd go away that weekend. We're going to have a really nice time together." And you go, "Look, it's business, it's really important. I can't get out of it." And she goes, "Okay, fair enough." Week before the meeting, it's cancelled, okay? She doesn't at this moment know that it's cancelled. Okay? Do you go for the nice romantic weekend, or do you go to the tournament and not tell her?
So I'm assuming this business meeting was out of town, as an out of town business meeting.
Yeah. It's away for the weekend, whatever. Yeah, similar sort of time frame.
I think what I would do is, in the lead up to this meeting, is encourage her to find her own weekend plans.
Oh,
the
clever.
Minute those plans are cemented.
Yeah.
She's upstairs. I've got to be. The minute those plans are cemented, then I reveal the errors of my ways in terms of saying, okay, well.
So you wouldn't go for a straight deception. You try to
it's more deceptive.
Play it, game it, wouldn't you, to suit you? Yeah. Make it look like it was all her idea.
Do you know something though? It's a risky maneuver, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is risky. What would you do?
Do you know? I thought you would say go to the tournament, but now when I'm thinking about it, it does feel very risky. It feels it's almost like being unfaithful, isn't it?
On the back of 2 failed marriages, Martin. What our combined experience.
So listen, if you're listening to this, don't take our advice.
No.
If you're in a marriage.
I think the problem is.
Yeah.
Do you know the problem? The problem is you can't tell. You can't come back and talk about the victories you had or the crazy stories. Not that there's that many victories or crazy stories from an ASL tournament, but you can't come back and talk about that with any sense of. And there is the lugging. Like, there's a very different way of packing for a tournament to a business meeting.
Yeah.
But,
no, I think you're right. Don't lie.
Let's not do it. Let's
try and manipulate the situation so it looks like her idea. That's my last question, Dave.
Excellent. Okay, good stuff. Okay. So next up we've got Rob McGinley, and he's going to talk about a scenario that Rob and I played, this counterattack at City Bowie Zoo, the annual scenario. Again, Rob has a real interest in tanks. You're going to see some great models that he's done, bits and pieces. But also, what Rob likes to do is analyse the tank matchup. And this is what you can really do with tanks versus tanks. It's a great opportunity to really look at the matchups of the 2 tanks, what you should be doing in terms of thinking about the distance of the engagement, the types of weapons you're going to employ, the tactics, things like that. So this scenario is a really good one for looking at how that plays out in the long run. And what Robbie's going to do then is we're going to play a couple of scenarios where it features a fair amount of tanks. And Rob will do an analysis of the matchup and the tactics. And then he'll look at the scenario as it plays out and decide how well we did that. So that's coming up in a couple of episodes' time. We're going to do that. So first of all, here's Rob. I should point out, Rob very kindly did this video 2 or 3 times because we had some audio issues and he wanted to improve some bits and pieces. On his final attempt, which he did a great job of, he'd lost his enthusiasm a little bit, and so don't feel like he's not enthusiastic. He's done this 3 times before, and so that's where it is. But anyway, here's Rob. Great bit of content here, and he'll talk about our game as well. So over to Rob.
So basically, the scenario we're analysing is one from the annual, and it's a game that Dave and I played. This is the scenario from the annual, the historical detail of the big M4s fighting the Panzer III and Panzer IV specials at the day. So basically, the way I'd like to cover this is to look at the combatants and then move on to rules and then followed by the game. So reviewing the combatants both in pictures and then in 1/35th scale models and then the ASL version. So beautiful artwork, I always think, from the boxes of my models, and I always keep my front cover of my boxes for the future. It's very similar to the beautiful artwork of the ASL artwork. And the Panzer IIIJ is no exception with the 2 versions from the different kits. And here's the Panzer IIIJ that was fought in the battle. Nice long barrel, lots of machine guns. Here's another version, but this one has the up armoured at the front with the spaced armour to help prevent kill. And from an ASL point of view, here is the Panzer IIIJ with a beautiful rate of fire of 2, the 50L gun, lots of machine guns, front armour of 6, nice crew survival, no smoke discharges, and APCR, which will become relevant later. Here are the pictures of the Panzer IV. The G and the F2 are the same. Lovely art showing the beautiful make of the tank. And you get a lovely model out of that with a lovely long-barreled killer. And in ASL, again, good movement, good machine guns, nice L gun, good crew survival, smoke discharges, smoke rounds, and less relevant, but still there, APCR in 1943. And finally, we have the M4A1, and you see the beautiful picture of what's called the composite armour, or the one-piece armour that was sealed to the bottom, top and bottom sealed together, and then the turret, a one-piece turret. And what we see again is that composite armour. And in the model, you can see the beautiful, smooth, rounded composite armour, lots of machine guns, and typical green American camouflage covered in sand. The other M4 versions had the welded hull, and I thought I'd just show you the front plate welded hull. Comes up quite nicely. Anyway, in ASL, the M4A1 doesn't have any of its toys because it's 1943. Has the red crew survival number, which is quite nasty. It's a large vehicle, though it does have the best armour at the front of 11. And that's that composite hull represented here with lots of machine guns. Were those M4s actually deserving that red size number? And what are those long barrels the German guns look like? Well, absolutely in the matchup of these 3 combatants. You can see with the Sherman that it looks pretty large when you come up close. And from the side, it seems quite tall with a beautiful aiming spot, that star, and those stars and stripes, they're beautiful aiming spots. But when you put them side by side, you see beautiful long barrel guns, which the Germans thus deserve that wonderful L. But, the Panzer III versus the Sherman, or the M4, is absolutely a nice small versus large, but I'm not sure about the Panzer IV. Other rules I'd like to look at in order, making sure before we play, we understand things. Americans prior to 1944 use red to hit numbers, whether they, their Shermans are Lend-Lease under the British, the Russians, or themselves. And this was explained later to do with optics and ammunition. So just like T-34s, you lose a lot after 7 hexes. And the to kill number, that 75L obviously outdoes everything, and not too bad against those 11 frontal armor. And definitely it was 11 circles, so the 8 will do really well. But that 50L won't do as well, particularly since the Sherman, when it starts to fire, really does have that 14 -6, so it does do well. But that 50L does have that advantage of, particularly if it gets up close, of that APCR, which you can get at nearly 50% of the time, and particularly up close, turns that 17, 18, 19. So it's a lovely shot versus that 11 armor or the turret of an 8. While the 75L doesn't get much for its APCR, particularly at long range, which you'll see in this game is important. The red cruise survival, talking about easier to burn, is in the AV instruction table, so equal to. And the historical notes for the 3J, or the Mark III Special, and the story about Hitler wanting these tanks to have longer guns is there, as well as the Mark IV Special, which turned up in Africa and really did over the Shermans and the other British and American tanks of the time. Both those have German vehicle notes N and S, but neither of those notes really change these tanks' operation. The M4A1 medium tank, again, a bit of historical stuff about this composite armor. Its characteristics and notes are very important. From Chapter A, it gives us that it uses red to hit numbers prior to 1944. It tells us about the ammunition, the optics. Note R is the most important, so that's the multiple hits thing. So this is 75mm guns, the only gun greater than 40 that has really this multiple hits. And that's really important because you get a hit, though it's red to hit numbers, you actually get 2 chances of 14 -6 if you get doubles. The other notes didn't seem to be very relevant and were to do with different vehicles that were used in other theatres. So, talking about the tactics and the game. So these are the things that we've mentioned that the German player has as a summary about the kill numbers, use of APCR, using their machine guns and not having any problems with movement. And these are the notes for the US player, which is basically you got to get tanks off. You got to get them off quickly. If you think about the scenario, which I'll show you, and this is a very slow M4. And in reality, you're showing the Germans your side and rear armor. So if you can get it go up front and close, you'll win the gun battles, particularly with all the advantages. So the rubbish red to hit numbers is counted by getting up close. And in this case, you have no toys. So when we set up the game, which you can see the first German group enters from the bottom, and Dave's idea was just to get up right up into the Shermans, despite the fact that the Shermans do better when you get up close to them with those Panzer IIIs. He only wanted these Mark IV Specials to come on a long way away and shoot people as they left the board. We did play this as per the SSR, where the covered arcs were, determined by die roll and pointed even backwards and forwards and pointed all directions. That could have easily been changed if I fired my bow machine guns to point to the oncoming Germans because they come on first. But we played it so that we went with the authentic SSR and left the Americans pointing all directions. And this was important because when the Germans were there and the Americans had to start, the Germans got the first shot. And sometimes those shots were rear shots. And my tactics were to just turn and face them and do over those Mark III Specials really quickly, because I had the advantage of I could get up nice and close. But I also had to get off the board, and as you can see, it's quite hard to get off the board in under 5 to 6 turns, so you don't really have more than a turn to do battle. So there's no stopping and waiting. And also there's that urgency that the Germans come on turn 3. So this is what happened as expected, and this is after the Germans come on turn 3. So I lost 2 in those initial higgledy-piggledy turning around. The Mark III Specials took me out, rear armor shots. Dave rolled really well. I then just cleaned up those Panzer III specials, except for the one that was hidden behind the hillock. That's interesting because to get him, you have to get up close. And of course, as I said, that's when the Panzer III has that APCR. But I'm just about to move on my turn 3, and the Mark IVs have acquired 2 of my tanks out of my 8 remaining Shermans. I lost 2 on the way through, taking out the Mark IIIs. So those tanks would bring me down to 6, and then losing 1 more means it'd be under 6 and the game would be lost. And that's exactly what happened. I lost both of those with Dave's Dead-Eye Dick kills, and then when I came around the hillock, it wasn't the Panzer III that took me on. As I said, it just can't penetrate even with the APCR. It has to get it. It's a 50% to start with. But those Panzer IVs didn't even have to fire many before my number 6 tank was killed, and therefore I don't have enough to win by desert exit points. So we called it quits at that point in time. I personally would have really made myself difficult to the US if I was the Germans. I would have set everything up behind the hillock so that he would have to come up really nasty and close to take me on. And though he when he comes up close, he will win the battle eventually. When you're up close, as I said, if I can get my rate of fire and my APCR working, I have a bigger chance of immobilization and kills against that frontal armor of 11 that's circled down to an 8. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It's just basically revising the concept of looking at your tank, seeing the good and bad, integrating your tank tactics, and remembering always roll low. And if you roll low with tanks, you obviously, and that's what Dave did, will win. And if you like this session, please tell Dave and Martin, and I might do another one on a battle that Dave and Martin have done.
Okay, so thanks again, Rob. That was excellent, Rob, and some good content there, and I enjoyed the game. And another victory for the good guys. So, what can I say? We're on a roll. We have to thank our Patreons. So again, thank you everybody for your patronage. We have 5 sign-ups for the Play by Mail tournament. So this is a last call for any patron that would like to be part of the Play by Mail tournament. Ian Willie has kindly offered to do us a diorama for the winner. We're going to do that based on the final round scenario. Everybody will play whatever it will be, 4, 5, 6 rounds of the scenarios for the tournament. The last one, the diorama will be based on, so it'll have the right tanks and the right whatever it will do. Ian's can do whatever, I can't even describe it, but Ian will do a better job than I can describe. And for that, I'll put some links to Ian's Etsy page and perhaps some other samples. Ian's incredibly talented at this guy. And he's a nice guy as well. We both played him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we haven't seen him.
Do you know, this is the first time I think that I've been in a tournament of some sort where I would really like to win the prize.
Yeah.
I've never been a tournament where it made any real difference. You know,
Right.
I would rate this prize. Yeah.
And you are in the tournament, so feel free, guys. Sign up. You got till the end of August to sign up for this. Last few bits and pieces. We have our live game, which is going out as we speak tomorrow. So Tuesday the 24th, we're going to do Fighting Withdrawal on Twitch. You and I are going to play that. I don't expect very many viewers, but we'll do it and we'll have a good fun. We've then got the review of the final coming up, played by Tom Rapetti and Tomo for the Meat Grinder, which I won't give you spoilers, but it's easy to find out the result if you look for it. But great game they played, really impressive. So we're going to do that one. We're also going to talk about computer games that kind of take their rules and their inspiration, from ASL, and we found quite a few of them, didn't we? So so we've got that coming up as well, and that's kind of interesting. I mean, not that we're particularly qualified to do computer game reviews, but we can certainly talk about how we felt about them and whether we enjoy them or not. So that's that. We're going to go prepare now for our live game, Martin. Our 17th play of Fighting Withdrawal, no doubt. But I think actually Fighting Withdrawal is one of those scenarios that is absolutely, it becomes a better scenario when you know what you're doing. I think when you very first play Fighting Withdrawal, it's tricky to get a feel for how fast the Russians should be moving and and the finish, but how fast the Russians should be pulling back.
Particularly,
But in more so,
the
Russians can get caught too far forward sometimes.
That's right.
So it's quite an interesting scenario for that. I always like the finishing fight with draw, so I don't have much chance. I don't have much hope for this one, but I'm looking forward to it regardless.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything else from you before we go?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, all right. Well, until tomorrow, and for everybody else, thanks very much for watching. Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Toby, for all your work. Thanks to the patrons, and we'll see you very shortly. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheerio. Bye bye.